much, Daniel. I'm really happy to be here. It's an honor to present this panel of inclusion and diversity, which is emerging exponentially because it creates value in the organizations. That's why. So we are honored to have two more panelists in our roundtable, Carrie and Valerie, who are in different places. We are doing remote. We have this possibility nowadays, and we can exchange our experiences in different markets. Let's start. I don't know if they are on stage as well. And we will start with the first question, which is that they present themselves. And I will do it meanwhile we are connecting. My name, as Daniel said, is Teresa Larcos. I am a board member of several tech companies and family-owned companies. And besides that, I created a non-profit organization, W Startup Community, in order to create the next generation of women entrepreneurs, women digital entrepreneurs, who are a part of this industrial revolution we are living in. So, besides that, let's start with the first question, which is how things are changing, Valerie and Carrie, in your countries. And please, let's make a small pitch about your experience and answer the question. Hello, welcome to the panel. Valerie, Christina?
Hi.
Hello, Valerie? Carrie?
Hi, thank you.
Hi, how are you doing, Carrie?
Good, I'm so glad to be with you today.
Yes, so we are. So let's talk about inclusion and diversity. And the first question, Carrie, is just give us an insight of your experience and what are you doing in your project and how things are working in your market. What signs are you detecting, opinion leaders, data of investors in startups led by women and founded by women? Can you give us an insight on how these things are changing, your positive insight of how things are changing in diversity and inclusion of women in the tech industry?
Yes, thank you for the question. So my role is as the managing director of the Global Impact Fund, which is a venture capital fund that invests in for-profit companies that drive social impact and are predominantly led by Black, Brown, and women entrepreneurs. This is our second fund, and in our first fund, 80% of our portfolio companies were led by Black, Brown, and women founders, and 100% of the companies were socially impactful. What we're seeing in the United States, where I'm based, is a big swing in the number of for-profit companies that exist that can deliver financial returns as well as social impact. That's really different than what we saw 10 years ago when there just wasn't enough deal flow that existed to invest in and take equity stakes in. My prior experience is I've spent the last 10 years building a global nonprofit organization called the Global Good Fund, which philanthropically supports social entrepreneurs. And there, about half of our entrepreneurs are women, and 2/3 are Black and Brown entrepreneurs. So we believe that there are great ideas that come from all people, but all people don't have equal opportunity or equal access to the capital that goes along with those ideas. So I'm very pleased to share more about the Impact Fund today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Carrie. And Karina, I don't know if she's in.
Yes, and I'm super happy to be here as well and super thrilled to join, even though it's just virtually.
Thank you so much. I hope you were here in Madrid.
Yeah, unfortunately not, but hopefully next time. So as already mentioned, I'm Karina. I'm from Female Founders, and we are the fastest growing community for entrepreneurial women in Europe. And we basically have the big vision of bringing more diversity, more gender diversity into the European tech ecosystem. So on the one side, we support female founders with their biggest challenge, fundraising. And on the other side, we also work with female talent in scale-ups to bring them in leadership positions, basically. And me personally, I have a background in in the startup ecosystem for over 7 years, having worked for several startups and also worked for ecosystem players. And if I look into the market, our market is, as already mentioned, European wide, and I think there's a good and there's bad news. So on the one side, the good news is, or let's start with the bad news, there's still 90% of the venture capital money in Europe is still going towards all male teams. And I think this is very similar in the US. Would be very interesting what Carrie has to say there. And the overall volume that is going towards all male teams hasn't really changed over the last years. But the positive note is that especially in early stage investment, we do see a slight nice trend towards more investments in female-led companies. So that is something that's very positive. And I think this really goes hand in hand also with more venture capital companies committing towards more gender diversity. We don't have so much good data when it comes to diversity in terms of ethnicity or religion or also age, but maybe one thing that we also do know is that I think it's 42% of VC capital is going towards founding teams that have at least one founder from an elite university. So something like Harvard, Stanford, Cambridge, and Oxford. I think this is something when we talk about diversity, something that we can consider as well.
So how interesting your insights regarding different kinds of diversity. It is known that different studies of leading companies and universities said that teams that are conformed by diverse teams, understanding diversity, intergenerational, age, gender, race, cultural, geographical diversity, this creates value, and those companies are really profitable. So this is something we have experienced in corporations, in small companies, and now we are experiencing that also in startups. I have a question regarding a study that we made, and it says that when there is diversity, especially gender diversity we studied, the return on investment is higher, the companies, the startups last longer, and besides that, the startups they have less debt, and if they are more solvent, they return the debt very quickly. So what are the best practices that you have in your markets, either cooperating with the public administration or in a private initiative? Please, Carrie.
Thank you for the question. And I thought the point about the percentages that was shared by my esteemed colleague here, in the US markets is even worse than in Europe. So here, 2.8% of all capital goes to women-founded companies, and less than 1% of all venture capital goes to Black and brown founders in the US. In our fund, it's 80%. And that reflects the points that you just made about, we believe that the research, which shows that the companies do better when you invest in diversity. And so the way we're approaching that is there are not many funds that are led by women or Black or brown general partners. There are not many funds where the investor base consists of women. It's so bad that it has to be intentional, because it would be hard to achieve the statistics that exist in the US market unintentionally, given that half of the population, is female. So what we did is we tried to be very intentional about how we built our company and also who we took money from. So for the Global Impact Fund, not only is our portfolio diverse, but the general partners are diverse. It's a woman-led fund. I'm the managing director, and we have general partners that are Black and brown. Our investment committee has Indigenous Indian, Black, brown, women, men, all different kinds of people. However you pray, eat, look, speak, you will find someone, whoever you love, you will find someone on the investment committee that will make you feel comfortable as you pitch. And in our investor base, half of our investors, whether you measure by the number of investors or whether you measure by the amount of capital, consists of Black, brown, and women investors. And so at every level of the company we've built, you find diversity that is designed to support the research that you just shared. So that's how we're approaching this problem.
This is fantastic and so interesting. In fact, I wrote a book called Women Entrepreneurs, the women that are changing the world in the digital era. And there is one founder, the startup is called We Bloom, and she's an African woman who lives now in Switzerland. And most of the African women, half of the entrepreneurs are women, but only 5% of the investment goes to women. And the impact of women entrepreneurs is triple because they revert the return of their startups in their cities, in their small villages, in their families, and in their companies. So let's invest in diversity. So what are your thoughts about that, Karina?
Yeah, so first of all, I would like to mention that I really like the approach that Carrie and the Global Impact Fund is taking. And I think this is absolutely the right approach, especially if you look at all the studies that are showing that if you have, like from a gender perspective, if you have more females in your investment teams, there's also more investments toward female-led ventures. So there's a very clear correlation, and that's only a very human correlation because we do invest into people that are similar to us. Yeah. So it means if we have a lot of males in the investment team, there will be also naturally a lot of investments in male-led companies. Whereas if we have more females in the team, we will have more investments in female-led companies as well. And I guess the same goes for diversity, like for in general diversity, speaking about Black women and brown women and so on as well. And Carrie, there's also some very interesting happenings here in Europe that I want to connect you to. There's one Founderland. They also concentrate on women of color here in Europe and support them basically. Yeah, if we look into how we basically support female founders, we don't invest ourselves, at least not yet. We support them more in terms of education and guidance and connecting them with investors. So we have set up a whole accelerator program, and so far we've worked with 49 companies. And we've been really successful in what we've been doing because 60% of these companies were able to fundraise after the program. And in total, they fundraised already 14 million euros and with an average pre-seed round of 400K, which is really nice. There's some news that we want to announce soon about more of our portfolio companies getting fundraised. So I think, what we've been doing over the last 2.5 years with the progress really shows success. And I'm super happy to see that all over Europe and even globally, there's a lot of these initiatives popping up. And I think we need to join forces with all of these, with all of these organizations, all of these opportunities, because there's so much work still to do, even though it's going towards the right direction. There's a lot that we need to tackle.
Karina, this is so interesting that you almost more than half of the people who took this accelerating program that you developed are reaching their goals of finding fundraising and funds to develop their programs. Because for women, it's so difficult to reach business angels and VCs, especially when they have the minimum product already developed in pre-Series A. They find a lot of difficulties to find these funds because most of the investors are men, like close to 95%. And as you mentioned, we invest in what is familiar to us. So these things are changing. Even in Silicon Valley, they invented one fake founder in order to avoid this bias in investment, because it was a Stanford study that demonstrated that there was a problem when women used to go to pitch alone and they had to do this strategy. So now things are changing, and we are so positive. And my next question is, what are your success stories you want to share? Elevate our, let's say, elevate our, to say that we have to follow that path. Please let us know what are your best practices, and just make us happy with those nice numbers.
Sure. So we're actually taking a similar approach as Karina. We also have a sister organization, nonprofit called the Global Good Fund, which is an accelerator. And not all of our entrepreneurs come from there. We can invest in whomever we want to, but it's very nice to have deal flow that comes out of an accelerator that's prepared and has been de-risked and is investment ready. So a couple of examples there. We invested recently in a company for the second time, which is female led. She was in school when we first found her. She did a pitch competition. And we supported her. We added a board member to her board. She was able to retain control of her company that way. The company is called Global Village Fruits and is a jackfruit company. So it's a meat substitute product that's now in retail chains throughout the United States. She just raised a $20 million round on an $80 million valuation. We were her first $10,000 philanthropic grant, and then came in for a few $100,000, and she went on to raise multi-million-dollar rounds. So the social impact there is not only is she a woman-led business that buys from 1,000 farming families where previously jackfruit was going to waste 70% of the time, and now these families are making 10 to 40% of their annual income based on her product. That's one example. I'd also thought I'd share a couple of other examples where it's not just a sweet story. This is really hard. And sometimes people aren't at the same starting line. And so we're working with a couple of entrepreneurs right now where they weren't quite there yet, but we believed in their leadership. And these were also women entrepreneurs. And so we paired, for example, one entrepreneur whose leadership we truly believed in and product we really believed in with the director of another company to help her test her financial assumptions and build a stronger financial model that she felt comfortable presenting. And then we'll make our first investment. We have another company where there is no product yet, but we again really believe in the vision and the leadership of the entrepreneur. And so we're going to give her a very small amount of capital to go test the product, make sure it works, and then we'll have the right of first refusal as her lead investor. And what we're trying to do here is not only help support the leadership of these female founders, but also demonstrate to the market that we're putting capital behind our words. So those are a couple of case studies for where we're really proud, not only of the women who are excelling today, but the women who are taking the necessary steps to get there, and that we're able to signal to the market that they're investment ready.
So how interesting, because these are role models for, we are painting paths for women who want to pursue these dreams, to open a startup and to develop one idea that most of the times has a purpose behind and has a strong feeling to achieve that goal. So what are your thoughts, and what are your Karina, the case studies, the success stories we want to share, because we are very positive. People are very interested in women startups. We want to share these ideas, these projects that have been successful, to share the world that these stories exist, because most of the stories that are successful from women are not known. Karina, please.
Yeah. And I think we definitely need to put them more out there. And this is really something that is also dear to my mind. So we also have like an annual conference where we put on stage more of these female founders that are already more at more at the scale up stage or already had an exit and basically showcase their success stories. In terms of our accelerator, since it only has been running 2.5 years and we work with very early stage companies, we don't have like this one big success story yet of like a company raising Series B. That would be a bit quick. However, I think I want to share one story that was something that touched me personally a lot, and that's one of the startups that was in our recent batch that finished in July. And she's already a super amazing woman and a really great female founder that I'm sure I can tell many success stories about her in a couple of years. She basically went out of the program and said now she really has this confidence and she can go to these investors with confidence, and that was a game changer for her. And she was able to basically really showcase this fear of missing out to the investors. And now she's currently raising. She's actually signing it tomorrow. So I'm super excited for her. And she was saying that she talked to the investors before the program and they didn't want to talk to her. Basically, they said that that startup's not interesting to them. And having learned everything in the program and having built up that confidence by also being connected with the other female founders, because I think this is something really important. We women need to stick together and we need to work with each other. And really really support each other, motivate each other is really important. And now, she's finishing that round and I'm super proud of her. And I think that's something that we definitely need to say to each other as well, that we are proud of each other if we accomplish something.
This is fantastic, to run away from fear and to have the courage to face and to take the risk, to face pitch and to sell your product. So I would like this last question to ask you, Carrie, what are your thoughts and what measures would we need to put in place in order to increase the number of women entrepreneurs, the number of intergenerational entrepreneurship, or race diversity entrepreneurship, the increase of investments and VCs that have diverse origin from geographical, from race point of view. So what are the measures that we should put in place in order to increase this diversity that we all know that is creating a high value and wealth in the different industries? Please, Carrie.
What a great question. Well, let me start by saying I have no financial background. I am not trained as a venture capitalist. My background is in philanthropy. My background before that was healthcare.
Yeah.
And there's no reason I can't manage a fund. There's no reason I can't pick great companies just as well as anyone else in the room. And so I think the first thing is it took another woman shaking me to get that message, to make sure that I understood that I could do this. So I think we start by believing in ourselves and being vocal about believing in other women, that we can start really small. Our first fund was extremely small, but the point was to demonstrate, to do a pilot and demonstrate that the concept works. And now we're on our second fund and there will be funds after this. So the first one is to get out there and do something, to try. And it doesn't matter how small we start, and we don't need to check every box in order to do a phenomenal job. The second point I would make is that men have been really important in my personal journey. I have wonderful mentors, many of whom are men. We have general partners who are men. We have investors who are men. We have investment committee members who are men, and portfolio companies and mentors and coaches. Men are critical to having an open mind and being part of the support system to help more women step up to the plate as investors and entrepreneurs and signal that you believe in us. That's the way the world is going to change. And we're going to unlock trillions of dollars in the US economy when we do that. And globally, it's so much more. So my two messages would be believing in ourselves enough to take a first step forward and try, no matter how big of a step it is, take that leap of faith in ourselves. And secondly, that for the men listening, you are so important to making this all work. And from a diversity and inclusion standpoint, in terms of race, ethnicity, age, it takes all kinds of people and all kinds of companies to really unlock the potential of the market. And so until we're truly inclusive, we're ignoring economic opportunities. So my message is to believe in ourselves and to reach out to people who are different from us in order to unlock that economic possibility.
Fantastic. So let's talk to men, because it is demonstrated when men and women work together, we build fabulous things. So let's work together. And what is your thought, Valerie? What are the measures we should take in order to close this gap, the investment gap and the inclusion and diversity gap?
Mm-hmm. So first of all, I really like what Carrie said. I think it's really, really important to take men into this equation and talk with them and include them. And that's something that we do a lot here as well. I think there's two things or two sides that we need to work at. On the one side, we can't just, there's this common opinion, or many people think we need to only support women in order for them to fundraise. But the thing is, they are already good, like there's not just this side that we need to work on and help them and support them and mentor them. We also need to change the structures and how VCs are cooperating nowadays. So, and one thing how to tackle that is also we need more diversity in venture capital. There is a structural problem that is already there, and we need to basically take that serious and need to get more women in there. We need to get more people from different backgrounds into venture capital. And also, we need to be more aware of our unconscious bias. And I think some VCs already started with unconscious bias trainings. And I think this is really key in really understanding how much biased you are. And honestly, I'm as well. Everyone here in this room is. And it's really important to be aware of it and to tackle it, basically. And then on the other side, obviously, we need to still support women in their way, in their path. And most of the companies that we work with are first-time founders, and it's hard to be a first-time founder. It's also hard for male. It's not just hard for women, I have to say. And fundraising is hard. So we need to support them in that. And but the one message that I want to bring across as well is it's not just mentorship that's key. We really need to really take it serious and invest in these companies. That's why I'm so happy to see also that these funds like Carrie's fund exist.
This is great. And we are in the final minutes, just 1 minute and a half, and we are going to wrap up this session with a final thought from our panelists. Please, can you take us like a last inspiring thought so that the audience also get inspired by this experience that we are sharing with you? Please, Carrie.
My thought is to invest in yourself first, because no one will invest in you if you don't invest in yourself first. And secondly, to put aside a little bit of save up and put aside a little bit of money to invest in someone else. It doesn't matter how small. The point is to make an investment in someone else and in yourself.
Thank you so much. And Karina, please, a final thought to share with our audience to wrap up this session.
Yeah. So for all the women in the room and for all the people that are from underrepresented groups, I would say, get yourself out there, speak up loud, try to be present, be there in the room. And for all the men out there, or everyone who's not from an underrepresented group, support women and support underrepresented groups.
Yes, so thank you so much. Only 8 seconds left. If you want to pose a question, I don't know if we have time. If not, my final thought is just follow your dreams and ask for help. Everybody is willing for help to help people who want to make and to have positive dreams, big projects. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you all the organization. I think this is just the last word of this panel. Thank you.